Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope you've had a good week. I'm popping by to create a little off-the-cuff card with my new release. My new release is now available on my website. Yay! And I'm just chuffed to bits with it. So I've got my new release here. Don't know what I'm using at the moment, but I've got all my new release stamps. I think I'm going to use the little A8 one for definite, but we shall see. Right. And when you've got these lighter evenings, it's great because you can fit so much more in. Well, I think it's great anyway. But I just want to say a huge thank you to those of you that have already placed your orders. Thank you so much. It's truly appreciated. So I thought I'd pop by and give you a little bit more inspiration. So I've got a piece of 4 by 6 inch Pink Frog Smooth Card 300 GSM, a black mat 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, and a white card blank 5 by 7. The white card blank is cut out of A3 card. I cut my own card blanks. And the wallets, because I've been asked before, the wallets that I use, these are A6 that I have for my A6 stamps and my A7 stamps. I get them from Amazon, and I also get the A5 ones as well. Them are the ones that I usually go for, the A6 and the A5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the project. Now, I'm quite warm. There's no beating around the bush here. I'm quite warm. So I'm going to use my anti-static bag just in case I've put any fingerprints on there. So I'm just using my anti-static bag. Couldn't live without that now. And then I'm going to use my little A8 stamp. Let's put this out of the way, she says. So I'm going to use the Art Backdrop TE17. And this is a little A8 stamp. And it's got the actual background on there, the art background, and then it's got a sentiment separate. Free your imagination, and you can read it quite clearly. So let's just place them together. I start like this, placing these things together, but it doesn't stay like that. So I'm going to use this little background. Let's just place that in the wallet because that will end up everywhere. So we'll add that little stamp. And then I'm going to use my Versamark ink. Now there's not too much black ink on there, so I don't really need to wipe it, and it's completely dry. So we should be fine using the Versamark ink. I love the Versamark, the sticky ink pad, which allows me just to add embossing powders because we've got that stickiness on there. I've even got a quiet fan, bear with me. Hey, I'm going up in the world, I'm going all posh. I've actually got a fan that doesn't make a noise so that it doesn't affect the videos. How good is that, especially for a menopausal woman? Definitely. Right, so we're just inking the background stamp up, and what I'm going to do is, the stamp is only A8, and I'm going to show that it doesn't matter what size stamp it is, you can create a background quite easily just out of your A8 stamp. Now, it doesn't matter, with it being a background, you don't have to have perfection. With it being a background, it doesn't matter if it's slightly random or you don't get all the detail, because you cover some of it up, plus we'll add inks, so it looks completely different anyway. So I'm moving the stamp so that I'm not using the same areas every single time. So I've used mostly the whole stamp there, and then I've lifted it up a bit, so I've got a different area of the stamp just to make the background look a little different. So just think about moving your stamp around just so that you get different areas each time. And just like you would with your VersaFine Clair, just give that ink a little bit of time just to grab hold of the card, and try to make it so it's not, so that you haven't got the whole stamp just regimented in lines. Just move it up and down a bit so that it's just more, well, I think it's just more pleasing to the eye if you just move the background around a little bit. So let's move it in here so that we haven't got the whole stamp there. And again, don't stress if you don't get a perfect image, because you're creating a background, and that's all part of it. And what you have to remember with your A8 stamps is you don't need to press too hard. It's just a little A8 stamp, so you don't need to squish that too much. I know it's tempting, but don't squish it too much. In some ways, with the little A8 stamps, it's better to not squish them at all, really. Especially if you want sort of a more random backdrop. Let's have that one there. Oh yes, we're building a nice background now. And it's slightly tinted, my ink, because there's a little bit of black ink on that stamp. And it's just picking that up, that's all. So let's just turn this around so we can get that little bit there. There we go. So we've got our Versamark on there, and I've actually remembered a piece of copy of paper is what I'm trying to say. Miracles will never cease. So then I'm going to use my white embossing powder. Mine's an old Stampendous one. Detail white. I've been asked that as well before, but I know Wow do some nice embossing powders, and I'm sure they've got a detailed white embossing powder. Well, you just use whatever you've got. There we go. And I'd just like to tap that just a little bit, she says, but I've got it on my hands. Just like to get rid of the excess. And then we'll just tip that back in again. You hardly use any embossing powder. And if you're new to stamping, it's always a thrill to see the embossing powders when you actually melt the powders. So that's taken rather nicely on there. So we'll just give that a heat. Now, I always think it's easier if you allow the heat tool just to heat up a little bit, because then you're not holding it over your card, wasting your time, like I often do, wafting it when nothing's going to happen because the heat tool hasn't reached temperature. So we're just going to give that a little bit of time just to reach temperature. And don't confuse this heat tool with a hairdryer. A hairdryer hasn't got the same heat output as the heat tool. The heat tool, you know, has got a huge heat output, nothing like a heat tool, a hairdryer, and it doesn't blow like a hairdryer. So if you're a newcomer, don't get confused. So let's just turn that around. Just as one area heats, I've now got an itchy nose. Oh dear. As one area heats, just then move your heat tool. Why do you always get an itchy nose just as you start embossing? It's like when the hairdresser starts doing something, or then you're doing your nails. I always get an itch. Just thought I'd let you in onto that conversation. So as that melts, I'm then going to move the card to a different area so that we don't over melt the embossing. If you over melt the embossing, what happens is that becomes a little matte rather than glossy. It doesn't matter if you get the odd area a little matte, but just try not to overheat that. And I'm holding that up a little because it just makes it easier for me to actually see what I'm doing. And it's easy to see if you've missed anywhere once you stop the heat tool and you actually look at the card in its entirety. And I can see instantly, because you can just see it's very dull looking. You can see where you've missed just a little bit. And sometimes I can do this several times, especially in the light. But you know, I still think I've missed a bit there. Same place. Let's hold it up now. There we go. So we've got a nice sort of glossy finish to that. And I always like to just let it cool a few seconds. Don't sort of place your, do you know, I've missed a bit at the top of you. Don't place your hand on it when it's really hot. There we go. It soon turns. Let's just brush that onto the floor like you do. Because there's a little bit of stray embossing. Seeing as it's me that does the hoovering, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do now is use some colours to blend over the top, and then it comes to life. So I'm going to start with the salvaged patina. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the ink just off my brush, and then I'm going to pick up the salvage patina. No inkling where I'm putting that salvage patina. I'm just going with it, just going with the flow. So just add the salvage patina and build up your colour nice and slowly. It doesn't have to be too quick. So I'm just going to add the colour here and there without sort of thinking about it too much. I'm not one of those people that says, well, I've got glue here, so I've got to have blue there, or I've got, you know, I literally make it quite random and just go with how I'm feeling, and I don't sort of, you know, read into it too much. So just sort of, now this is a paler colour, so I sometimes take my time just to build the layer up. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use Salty Ocean, which is a little bit of a stronger colour. So I'm not going to press very hard. I'm just going to make sure that I take a light approach. You can see that's so much of a darker colour. So I don't want to overpower it, just with one colour. Let's bring that down a bit more. And you can see I'm not cleaning my non-stick craft sheet, it doesn't matter. You can mop that up afterwards if you wish, spritz with water, have another piece of card, and then you can add that background to your card. So I'm then going to take Wilted Violet, again, another strong colour. So I'm just going to be sort of mindful that I don't take over the whole background just with one colour. And I'm using the kitchen roll mainly to keep my fingerprints just off the card. There we go. Then I'm going to go back to the salvage patina, and this is sort of a lot paler colour. And what you will do is, because I know these colours work together, I haven't cleaned my non-stick craft sheet, so you get sort of a different blend because you pick up some of the colour that's on the non-stick craft sheet. So you get a slightly different blend of colour. If you don't want that, I'll just show you the difference. And I do these things so that you can see why I sometimes go into detail about why I clean up. So let me just show you. So this is the salvaged patina. There's the Wilted Violet. Now that's the pure colour in its form, and then the purple was on the non-stick craft sheet. Can you see how it changes the colour if you leave it on the non-stick craft sheet? And that's why sometimes I say to you, now give your craft sheet a clean so that we're working clean. And that's just what I mean by that. For this project, it's neither here nor there. So let's add a little bit of salvage patina here. Now let's say with the salvage patina, if your ink pad like mine is a little bit drier, just go in direct to paper. It's not a problem. So mine's a little bit drier, but I don't bin my ink pads because it's a little bit drier, not at all. So let's take a little bit more of the wilted violet, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that colour, and then again I'm going to clean up so that that doesn't affect my colour. I'll then take a little bit of the salty ocean, so a little bit of that salty ocean, and come into the other colours as well, just so it looks sort of more natural. So let's just add a little bit there. It just looks more natural. You're not too constrained so that, you know, you've purposely like tried to be too uniform. So bring your other colours into each of the other colours. And again, that is quite light, so I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of the salvage patina, only because my ink pad is a little on the dry side. So let's just come in with a little bit more of that colour. Got some white there, so let's just fill that in. There we go. And then again, now you can look at your composition and think, oh, I haven't got enough salty ocean, or it isn't showing enough. So you can go in then with a little bit more colour. And because the salty ocean is a little bit of a stronger colour, you can go in with your brushes and be a little bit more constrained and purposeful where you layer that colour. So that's the salty ocean. Then we can go back to our wilted violet, and you can come back in again and move the colour a little bit further down if you wish, just to add a little bit more of that colour. There we go. Let's just move that out of the way. We'll give our non-stick craft sheet a bit of a clean, and then we'll just wipe here. And then I'm just going to take my kitchen roll, one spritz. It does not need to be flooded with water. So we're just going to remove the top layer, move to a clean area, one spritz, and then just come down. You don't want to go in the same area on your kitchen roll, because all you do then is apply the ink back on to the card, and we don't want to do that. So just keep going to a dryish area just to lift that colour again. And if you've got sort of an area that needs to be removed a little bit more, then just go over again. But once you've got your kitchen roll covered with ink, you must go to a clean area so that you don't reapply that ink. Let's move these out of the way. And now let's just give that a little bit of a polish, just so that it buffs that up. And then you end up with a lovely background that is just from a little A8 stamp, which I just absolutely love. So where is my little circle templates? So then I'm going to take my circle templates. This one is 2 3/4, and I'm going to use that size. So I'll just grab a piece of spare white card, and I'm just going to cut mine out because I'm not looking for perfection for it to be cut out. It's just so that I've got that matte layer. So I'm just going to use my pencil, and we'll just colour. Oh, look, I nearly went over the edge of the card again like I normally do. I do that all the time, you know. So we'll just cut out our circle. Told you I was right at the edge, didn't I? just cut this out. Oh, this fan's brilliant. It's not whirring in the background. Just now, it doesn't matter if your circle isn't perfect, not a problem at all. So what we can do then is we can just distress those edges. Now, if you've got a paper distresser, wonderful. If you haven't, be careful if you're going to use scissors like me. Just because if your scissors are very sharp and you slip, if you're not concentrating, you can cut your hand. I've never had a problem, but I do need to issue that warning. And some demonstrators really do moan if you use the edge of your scissors to distress. So I'm just giving that warning, just so that you know. You use your paper distressers. I'm well aware of what I'm doing and quite careful, and I'm sure you are too. So what I've got then is I've got the circle that I can offset wherever I wish now. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the same inks that I've used before and use them on the circular piece. But obviously I want to keep that white just so that it's a contrast against the colour background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink the stamp with the, I can never remember the colours, Salvage Patina. So just add the Salvage Patina because that's not going to show up as much as the others. Then I'm going to add a little bit of the Salty Ocean, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the Wilted Violet. Now I'm just going to create a little background just onto my circle using the same colours so that it looks like it follows through and that we all, you know, we're thinking about our design. So then you can start with the Salvage Patina again, adding your lightest colour first. Then I'm going to add the Salty Ocean, and then I'm going to add the Wilted Violet. And it doesn't matter, you don't have to see everything. The idea is that you're creating a composition just so that it works all together beautifully. And what I like to show you is that the stamp works beautifully in colours as well. You don't have to just use your black ink. Obviously it looks gorgeous in black ink, but we can see that there with the black ink. It's nice just to mix it up a little bit. Let's put a little bit more purple, maybe there. And just mix up how you use your stamp. It just makes the stamp look completely different, using it in a different way each time. And that then you wouldn't know was an A8 stamp. It just looks completely different. But against there, it's fine because you've got that, still got that open white area in the background. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take my black Posca pen. I think I'm going to take a piece of copier paper just so it saves on cleanup. And I'm just going to go around. Now this is a distressed edge, so just remember that. You can go around with your ink pad if that's what you prefer to do. I just don't like using the ink pad sometimes because the ink stays wetter longer and I don't want to worry that I'm going to smudge that. So I've got a little bit of a black matte just on that, which works lovely. And let's just clean our fingers just in case. And then we can give that a few moments. So we can just add this here like so. And then I'm going to, let's wipe our stamp. When I use oxides, I always give them a little bit of a clean, mainly because when you go back to using your VersaFine Clair, you don't want that oxide to affect your stamping. because of that sort of the way it oxidizes and sort of gives a cloudy impression. So let's place that A8 stamp back. Look how good I'm being. I'm placing a stamp back instead of just chucking it across the desk. Right, so then I think we're going to use our Catenaccio Floral here. So I'm going to use that one, which is from the Delight in Nature TE13. So let's take that stamp, and it's a really good size stamp. And again, you can use your, spit it out, your piece of card to just work around with your composition. Just lovely. So let's take the floral. Now I'm going to cut the floral out, so I do need another piece of white card. So let's take that white card, and do you know, the one thing I don't pick up is a black ink pad. And that's one thing I should always pick up because I constantly use it. So don't ask me why I don't pick it up. So I'm going to use my VersaFine Clair, which I just adore. Now I had the VersaFine Clair new colours on pre-order. The first lot have sold out and they're not even here yet. Now the distributor told us mid-May. Now it's mid-May to the end of May. But they're coming. Some stockists are getting them slowly because they're distributing them in the order the orders were placed. So I've placed several orders. So those of you that have pre-ordered the new colours, don't worry, you will be getting those. As soon as I get them, they'll go out the same day. And I'll try and do it 24-hour delivery. Do you like I just waffle onto something on a side note? It's while I remember these things. So I'm going to use the black ink, and I'm just stamping that onto Pink Frog Super Smooth card 300 GSM. Now I know some people will say that they like a card with a little bit of tooth. That's fair enough. I like the smooth card when I'm stamping, mainly because depending what colouring medium I'm using, if I'm using my pencils, I quite like the smooth card, but we're all different. You might like one with a little bit of texture. So I'm just going to blot that. Now I was going to use pencils, but sometimes I know some of you haven't got pencils. So how about we use the colours that I've used in the background? So you might have ink pads, you might have watercolours, so you can use that. Of course, Tracy in every video says she has to make sure her brush is clean. Good habits to get into are to make sure your brush is clean in the first place. But hey, we all have to have some bad habits. So I've got Salvage Patina, and then I've got Salty Ocean. So Salty Ocean is my dark colour, and that's going to be my light colour. We'll have some water. And what I'm going to do is pick up that dark Salty Ocean. And I'm just going to take off can you see the moisture that's on there? I find personally, if I go with too much moisture, it just runs away with me. And then I end up with all the colour floating everywhere and sort of no control whatsoever. And I can't work like that. So if you want an easy colouring technique, you can use your ink pads. Start with the darker colour. It doesn't matter if you prefer to start with the lighter colour. I'm going to start with the darker colour, and you can see I've not added any more water at the moment. I'm just going in. I know this looks like a water brush, but it's actually broken, and I haven't binned it. I continue to use the water brush just as a brush because that's me all over. So if you have got a water brush, make sure it doesn't flood or the water doesn't come out too quickly. I prefer to just work very slowly with a little bit of moisture. I have more control. Now, if you didn't want to add much colour, it works just like that. Let's just put this on. So if you just wanted to add a little bit of colour, that floral works just like that. So what I'm going to do is, if I rinse that out now, I've now got a wash of the same colour, but I don't want that in this case because I'm going to go to the paler colour. So I'm just going to rinse my brush a little bit, and then I'm going to pick up the Salvage Patina, and I'm just going to add the Salvage Patina and just sort of blend out my lines with the salvaged patina. And you can see I sort of dab off a lot of the moisture. Now you need to be aware the salvage patina is very pale, especially when you're using it like I'm doing, but I'm a great believer in sort of building up the colour slowly. So, and I was going to use my Prismacolor because I love colouring with them, but I know some of you don't have pencils, so sometimes it's nice to do it in a different way. So what I'm going to do now is just dry that a little bit. If I dry it a little bit, it'll allow me just to layer the colour again. So we'll take the Salty Ocean, a little bit of water, just sort of wet that brush, take off the excess moisture and pick up the Salty Ocean. Take off the excess moisture that's on there, and then I can go back in with the colour again. Now because I've dried the first layer, it's not merging into the first layer I've added. What it's doing is it's adding on to that layer, which is what you want it to do, because that's what gives you the depth. And therefore, once you get the depth, it looks a little less washed out. So if you're looking for a very simple way to colour, because colouring doesn't work for you, well, I can't recommend this enough, just to use your ink pads, just to add a little bit of colour. And you can add that depth just with a little bit of colour. And if you dry it in between, let's just clean that brush. If you dry that in between, you can then build that layer up. So let's take a little bit of Salvage Patina. You can also then go in with your distress pencils over the top if you wish. So pick up that Salvaged Patina. Now on your camera, that might not look like much, but it's definitely got another layer of colour and another depth. And what this does is, with the lighter colour, I'm blending the edges of the darker colour, just so that that darker colour isn't just sitting there, not blended and with too much of a harsh line. So already from the first layer, I've now got more depth on there. So let's dry that again. Simple ways, simple techniques work beautifully. You don't have to make it too complicated for things to work. So then we will take a little bit of water and we'll pick up the Salty Ocean. Do you like I have to keep looking at the colour? My brain's frazzled. I don't think there's enough water on there. You can tell if there's not enough water because your colour, or your heat tool just falls on the floor, your colour isn't moving. So I'm going to now add another layer of that colour. And it's no different than if you were colouring with your pencils. You add layers of that colour. So it's absolutely no different. But if you expect to get depth or blend, you're not going to get that with just one layer of colour. Some of you love just light colours. You don't like it too coloured or too smooth. That's absolutely fine. You go with the flow and however you love to colour. What I'm trying to show you is just some simple ways that you can get a reasonably good result without too much stress. So let's just add a little bit more of that selvage patina. And your selvage patina may be a little bit more fluid than mine. So now I just need to touch the edges with that selvage patina just to soften the edges of that darker colour, like you would if you were doing your alcohol markers or your pencils. And it's just the overall look I'm going for. So let's just clean that up. Obviously you don't have to clean that up. You can add that to another piece of card should you wish. Now I need to pick the heat tool off the floor, because instead of putting it on my cupboard properly, I just balanced it on the edge, just like you do. So just give that a little bit of a dry. There's no point me trying to add white highlight to a piece of damp card, because the gel pen just won't work. So just, normally I like to let it dry naturally, because then with it being the Distress Oxide, because there's moisture in there, it will continue to react with that moisture, but you don't want to wait forever. So let's grab our white gel pen. I'm actually remembering to do the white gel pen before I actually cut it out, which again is another miracle. Now, if you let it dry naturally, it works far, far better. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding some of those dashes and dots that I've added in to the stamp, which you can then add as well. I'm just adding a few dots to the stamp. Now you can see where I've put some markings. If you don't want to use the markings, or you find that it's not easy adding markings, just do some dots. You'll still get the same vibrancy, and it just adds some lightness and brightness to your design. So just a few little touches of white, and it really lifts the design. Let me see if I can, it just lifts that when you add some of that whiteness. So we'll then cut our floral out. So I'm just going to use a smaller piece of card. It's just the way I work. I don't like all this bulk when I'm trying to cut out, because I like to move the card rather than my scissors. So I'm using Pergamano scissors. I like the point on the scissors. I find it makes it easier for me to sort of cut out. I'm sure some nail scissors would work, as long as they're nice and sharp and give the edge-to-edge cutting. I'm just adding a bit of shape to the edge of the petals, because that's what the Catenaccio florals are like. They've sort of got some shape to them. Now, again, if you don't want yours coloured in the blue colour, you could quite easily colour this in purples. Just use a light purple, like shaded lilac, and then the wilted violet as your dark colour. Same techniques, just adding a different colour if you love your purple. There we go. And I always find the more I use the stamps, the more the ideas begin to flow. So I love sort of experimenting. And when I'm creating videos for you, sometimes more ideas start to flow. But this does look lovely as well, coloured in the purples. And if you're not a purple person, why not try some vintage shades and try all those browns? It will work quite lovely as well with that. So my floral will sort of be placed here like so, which works beautiful, and it will be lifted. And I will probably add some black cotton, which I'll just reach for now. But what I'm wondering as well, so let's place this floral back. And don't stretch your stamps, don't pull them, sort of roll them off the acrylic block. Don't stretch them too much. What I'm wondering is, will the wheelbarrow stamp on here just at the end? So the wheelbarrow is on the Wonder of Nature TE14. So let's take that wheelbarrow. And sometimes if I can't visualise something, I always use the acetate. So I can just, yes. So we can take this circle, like so. Then I can take my black ink, if I can actually get to it, take my black ink. I'm going to ink the whole of the wheelbarrow, even though I'm only going to use part of it. Let's move this all out of the way. And I'm just going to sort of use part of that wheelbarrow. And again, we've got that oxide on there on the circle, so just give that a little bit of time just to grab hold of that card, because it's no longer as porous as it was when it was pure white card. There we go, just wonderful. I'm just going to give that a little dry. You can blot it if you wish. Just going to give it a little dry, just so that we don't smudge any of that ink. And we'll just turn that over, just so that we can flatten that out a little bit. And then we're not fighting with that too much. There we go. There we go. So I can add this here. And you could just have that there, no problem at all, with nothing else if you wished. And I'm just going to add my floral that will go here. So now I'm going to add the circle. So let's just add that circle. There we go. Just making sure I just add plenty of adhesive so that that sticks down nicely. I want to add a few touches of white to the wheelbarrow, but we'll do that shortly. So this will sort of go here, but then I want to add a little bit of dimension to that. So we'll add a little bit of adhesive just to the stem, and then I'll add a little bit of the pin flare adhesive. I think this is running out now. We'll just add a little bit of that, and then we'll take a little bit of our cotton. So I pull it out long lengths like this, pull it out, gather it up, pull out, gather up, like so. Just so there's nice long lengths, so it's loose and free. So then I just sort of prise it apart so there's not too many strands all clustered together. And then I can add my little floral here, like so. Don't press it down too much because you want it to have a little bit of dimension, but it doesn't have to have too much dimension if you don't want that. May get a little bit more out of that. There's nothing like, you know, making it go as far as possible. So then I'm just going to remove the wheelbarrow. And again, don't stretch your stamps. So let's take the wheelbarrow. I've made loads of cards, but I'm still getting used to which one's got which sentiment on. Is that the one that's got that one? Yeah, I'm still getting used to which one's got which on it. And I've made hundreds of samples, but I'm still getting used to it. Let's grab another little wide. And I love that about my YouTube channel. I can just experiment. I can take my time, just like you would at home. So just giving my hands a little bit of a clean. So then I want to go to, where are you? This one. I want to go to this little stamp set here. Shadowed Elements TE12, and I've cut my little bird out. It's your stamp set, so your prerogative whether you cut bits out. So I've cut the little bird away. I'm just going to ink the little bird. And then I'm going to stamp the bird just on my wheelbarrow. And then if you'd got any sense, you would have done this first, but it just dawned on me just as I'd stuck the flower down. But hey ho, there we go. Just love the little bird sitting on there. Again, when you're touching ink pads, just give your hands a dry, and then just give, come here, that little bird a little bit of a dry. The only reason I'm giving it a little bit of a dry is then I can add touches of white with my pen, but I can do that afterwards. Let's leave that there. And then I could add the name of the floral if I want, but I'm slightly obsessed at the moment with this sentiment, A Quiet Place. I can just visualise me when I get a spare, well, it's a very few moments to sit in the garden. I often just look at the simple things, and just having a quiet place to sit is lovely, and I just love that sentiment. So I'll add A Quiet Place. Now, you don't need to press very hard with these sentiments. Where have you gone? Where's that sentiment? There it is. And sometimes I may repeat things. That's only for your benefit, so that you get the best out of your products that you spent your pennies on. For me, that is vitally important, that you get the best from your products. So let's just cut that down. And then before I sort of place it on, I'm going to be honest. That is the worst cutting out I've ever seen. I could have cut it better if I'd have closed my eyes. Right, that's better. So then we've got A Quiet Place, and I quite like the starkness against the card, but I do also like a little bit of the black. So I'm going to use my Posca pen just to add a little sort of touch of black. You can touch it very lightly against your sentiment. You don't have to be too heavy-handed. And then, or you can just completely miss the edge of it totally, and then it won't matter at all. That's better. So we'll just add our sentiment, A Quiet Place. Now, if you're adding white splatters like me, you can use your bleed-proof white if you don't want your splatters to change colour. I think I'm going to have it there. If you don't want your splatters to take on the colour from the oxides. I don't actually have a problem with that, but we're all different. So I'll add shading afterwards. So we'll just take our Posca pen. We'll just first of all add a few sort of touches of white just to our wheelbarrow and our bird, and we'll actually do the shading first. Of course, I haven't got my Inktense pencil, and I'm loving how some of you are laughing because my little I have got another Inktense pencil, but my little Inktense pencil gets smaller and smaller, and I know that you're all appreciating that. We've got to get as much use out of it as possible, you know. So I'm just using my grey Inktense pencil, and then I'm going to use my water brush. Just give that a rinse because it is pure blue. Now, if you've got a sort of a jar of water, it's far easier. The only reason most of the time I don't have a jar of water is because when I'm concentrating on demonstrating to you, I'm that person that would knock it over. And when you're live, it's not good if I suddenly knock some water over. So let's just add a little bit of shading there. I actually did it in the right order. Then you can put a little strip of card across there if you think that you're going to hit your sentiment with your splatters. And I have to say, I am loving being creative at the moment. I love my garden, I love going out in the garden, but I still love coming in and being creative, just for the joy of being creative. I love it. So we'll add this to our black mat, which then just pops because it highlights the black in the sentiment, the wheelbarrow. It just works beautifully. You could add the bigger bird from New Beginnings, TE4, if you wished. And also we can change this up, maybe do another card next time and create the background with multicolours, because that would work quite nicely as well. See how it inspires you with one technique to go and try it in different colourways. It works so nicely. So then we'll add that to a 5x7 card blank. Let's be professional and put a piece of copier paper down there, just so that we don't get any black marks on the back of the card. There we go. Just add that to our 5x7 card blank. And again, doing the usual, I have to lift it up and move it slightly. There we go. There we go. Let's just put the lid on that adhesive. And then the only little thing we forgot is a little bit of grounding of the floral, just so that it's not sort of just standing there floating in mid-air. And then you've got a lovely easy card. Oh, you know what else I've forgotten? You can't have the wheelbarrow just floating either. So let's just add a little bit of that as well. And there's a lovely easy card to create. And you've got an A8 stamp that you could create a background with, a focal image with, and just leave it at that if you wished. So I hope you've enjoyed that little demo. Love to all, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.